1. A machine of discipline, forged in the crucible of the world's most brutal training. The other, a force of nature, fueled by pure ferocity. The Spartan Phalanx versus the Viking Shield Wall. Unbreakable discipline against unstoppable fury. For ages, fans have argued in forums, and historians have debated if these two legendary warriors ever met on the battlefield, who would win? This is the ultimate warrior showdown. We're going to break down their tactics, their armor, their mindset, and their history to simulate a definitive battle. We'll separate the Hollywood myth from the historical reality to crown the true champion of ancient warfare. Now, let's get the big one out of the way. These two forces never actually met. Over 1,000 years separates the golden age of Sparta from the dawn of the Viking Age. This is a clash of eras, a collision of bronze and steel. But that's exactly what makes the question so fun. It's a what-if that just begs for an answer. On one side, you have the Spartan hoplite, a citizen soldier bred for one single purpose, to be a gear in the most feared infantry formation of the ancient world. On the other, the Viking raider, a warrior from the harsh north, driven by a desire for wealth, glory, and new lands. They were sailors, explorers, and terrifyingly effective fighters. To figure out who would win, we first have to understand the men themselves. Their societies were the forges that shaped them, and they fought for completely different reasons. First up, the Spartans. To be a Spartan, around the 5th century BCE, was to be a soldier from birth. Their entire city-state was basically a military barracks. They weren't just warriors, they were the state. From the moment they were born, their destiny was the phalanx. Infants who were deemed weak were left to die. At age 7, boys were ripped from their families and thrown into the agoge, a state-sponsored training program that was less school and more of a lifelong brutal indoctrination into the art of war. They were kept hungry to teach them how to steal food. They were beaten to instill an inhuman tolerance for pain. They were taught to endure the cold, march for days, and above all, to obey orders without a single question. The whole system was designed to strip away their individuality and replace it with unshakable loyalty to the man standing next to them. The result wasn't just a soldier, but a living weapon, conditioned to see death in battle as the highest honor. Their only job was to train and fight, while a huge population of enslaved people, the helots, did all the work to keep their society running. Now, let's jump forward more than a millennium to 8th century Scandinavia. Here, we find the Viking. Unlike the Spartan, a Viking wasn't usually a full-time professional soldier. The word Viking was more of a job description. It meant to go raiding. Most Norsemen were farmers, traders, or craftsmen who picked up their weapons for a season of adventure and plunder. But don't get it twisted. These weren't just farmers playing dress-up. They lived in a harsh world where being good with a weapon was essential for survival and for earning respect. While they didn't have a state-run agoge, their training was the brutal reality of everyday life, backed by a culture that glorified combat. Sagas and poems sang the praises of great warriors, and dying a glorious death in battle was the only way to get a ticket to Valhalla. The Vikings' experience of war was also way more diverse than the Spartans. Spartans trained for one thing, the pitched battle, that head-on collision of infantry. Vikings, on the other hand, were masters of the raid. They excelled at amphibious assaults, surprise attacks, and fighting in messy, broken terrain, where a warrior's individual skill was what mattered most. They fought Saxons in England, Franks in France, and Slavs in the East. Their adaptability was their ace in the hole. They were individualists, opportunists, and ferocious warriors fighting for personal gain, their chieftain's glory, and the sheer thrill of a good fight. And that's the real heart of the conflict, the state-made soldier versus the self-made warrior. A warrior is nothing without his gear, and in this clash of eras, the differences in their kits are massive. This isn't just a difference in style. We're talking about a Bronze Age army meeting an Iron Age one. Let's start with armor. The Spartan hoplite was a walking tank. His main defense was a suit of bronze armor, including a sculpted muscle cuirass for his torso, heavy bronze greaves for his shins, and that iconic Corinthian helmet that covered almost his entire head. This offered incredible protection from cuts and stabs, but it was also ridiculously heavy and hot. It was armor designed for one job: standing in a line and taking a frontal hit. The Vikings' gear followed a totally different philosophy. The wealthiest among them, chieftains and their elite huscarls, would wear a chainmail shirt made of thousands of interlinked iron rings. Chainmail was great at stopping a slashing sword, but wasn't as good against a powerful spear thrust. More importantly, your average Viking probably wore no metal body armor at all, relying on a thick leather or padded cloth jacket. This offered some protection, but it was no match for a dedicated spear point. The trade-off is mobility. The Viking was lighter on his feet and could move better in a chaotic brawl. But in a head-to-head comparison, the Spartan's full bronze suit offers far better protection. Next, the shields. This is a huge matchup. The Spartan carried the aspis, a massive round shield almost a meter across. It was made of wood, faced with bronze, and was incredibly heavy, weighing up to 18 pounds. Its most important feature was the grip, a central band for the forearm and a rope near the edge. This design meant the shield covered his left side and stretched over to protect the right side of the man next to him. This overlap was the literal foundation of the phalanx. The aspis wasn't just for blocking, it was a battering ram. The Viking shield was also a wooden circle, but it was lighter and held with a single grip in the center. This made it way more maneuverable, letting a warrior punch, parry, and angle it freely. It was a duelist shield, perfect for one-on-one combat, but it wasn't built for the immense crushing pressure of a phalanx, and it offered less overall protection than the heavy aspis. In a wall versus wall fight, the Spartan shield is the clear winner. Finally, the pointy ends. The main weapon of the Spartan was the dory, a spear between 2 and 3 meters long, with a leaf-shaped head and a bronze butt spike for good measure. In formation, the dory created a dense forest of spear points sticking out from the front of the phalanx. That reach was its single greatest advantage. For backup, a Spartan carried the sephos, a short sword for thrusting in the tight press of battle if his spear broke. The Vikings used a wider variety of tools. The spear was a common weapon for them too. But what they're famous for is the axe. The Dane axe, with its long handle and massive steel head, was a terrifying weapon, capable of shattering wooden shields or hooking an enemy's shield or leg. Swords were also common for wealthier Vikings, and their steel blades were generally longer than the Spartan sephos. And this is where the metal really matters. Viking Age steel was simply better than the bronze of the Spartans. A Viking axe could definitely snap the wooden shaft of a dory, and a steel sword holds a much better edge. The problem is, the fight would be decided before most Vikings could even get a good swing in. The Spartan phalanx didn't present one target, but dozens. The wall of spear points, combined with the dory's superior reach, meant a Viking would have to get through multiple spear thrusts just to get into axe range. That's a deadly, deadly equation. But gear is just one part of the equation. Tactics win wars. And here, the philosophies of the Spartan and the Viking couldn't be more different. This is a battle between a single perfected system and a flexible, chaotic storm. The Spartan way of war was the phalanx, and to just call it a formation is to sell it short. The phalanx was an offensive engine, a human bulldozer. Picture a block of men, typically 8 ranks deep. The men in front present a solid wall of overlapping shields, with a hedge of spear points sticking out. The bands famously used much deeper formations, But for the Spartans, this depth allowed at least the first 3 lines of spear points to project beyond the front rank. The men in the back weren't just waiting their turn. They were pushing, adding their weight to a coordinated, grinding shove known as the othismos. The goal was simple: keep the formation tight and literally run the enemy over. All that agoge training was for this one moment. The psychological effect of this silent, advancing wall of bronze and death was terrifying. But the phalanx had a critical weakness. It needed discipline and flat, open ground. If the formation was broken, flanked or forced onto uneven terrain, its greatest strength became its fatal flaw. The Vikings, by contrast, were masters of tactical flexibility. Their signature formation was the Shield Wall, or Skildborg, and yes, it involved locking shields together to form a defensive line. But that's where the similarity ends. The Viking Shield Wall was a defensive shock absorber, not an offensive steamroller. It was designed to weather a charge and absorb the initial impact. Once the lines met, the Viking way was to turn the battle into a brawl. Their shield wall was a base from which warriors could launch attacks, using their ferocity and skill to create openings. They were experts at using their axes to hook and pull down enemy shields, trying to shatter the integrity of a formation. They'd even use tricks like a feigned retreat to lure a disciplined enemy into breaking ranks. This style was perfect for the raids and skirmishes they loved. It thrived on chaos, allowing their champion warriors, and maybe even the legendary berserkers, to find weak spots and tear them open. So you've got a clash of ideologies. The Spartans bet everything on collective, unbreakable discipline. The Vikings relied on flexibility, individual skill, and creating chaos. The question is, can the Viking storm break the Spartan wall, or will the wall simply grind the storm into dust? The stage is set. The warriors are armed. It's time for battle. For our main simulation, we're putting 500 Spartan hoplites against 500 Viking warriors. The battlefield is a flat, open plain, the kind of ground where a phalanx should have the upper hand. The armies spot each other and begin to advance. The first stage is approach. The Viking host is a terrifying sight, a horde of leather and mail, screaming taunts and banging weapons on their shields. In contrast, the Spartans are eerily silent. The only sound is the rhythmic tramp of their sandals and the barked commands of their officers. They look less like an army and more like a single, monstrous entity marching forward. As the distance closes to about 30 meters, the Vikings let loose their opening volley. A shower of throwing spears and axes arcs through the air. But this is what the Aspes was made for. The Spartans raised their massive shields. The missiles thud harmlessly against a wall of wood and bronze. The coverage is so complete that only a few lucky shots find a mark. The phalanx doesn't even slow down. The second stage is impact. The two lines are now just meters apart. This is the moment a Viking charge would normally crash into the enemy, but they can't. The Spartan dory spears, at over 2 meters long, strike first. Before the Vikings can get close enough to swing an axe, the front of their shield wall is met by a wave of spearheads. The impact is devastating. With the first few Spartan ranks all able to project their spears forward, each Viking in the front line faces multiple spear points at once. The Viking shield wall is pierced and punctured before it can even brace. Men scream and fall, their shields splintered, their bodies impaled. The Viking charge is stopped dead, and they lose a huge number of warriors in the first few seconds of contact. Third stage is the grind. This is where the battle is truly won. The Vikings are now pressed against a hedge of spears. They show their legendary grit, pushing back, trying to make room to fight. A mighty Dane axe swings and connects with a dory, snapping the wood. Another hooks a Spartan's aspis, trying to wrench it aside and create a gap. But for every spear they break, two more are there to take its place. And the Viking who overextends himself to swing that heavy axe is now wide open. A Spartan in the second rank sees the opening and thrusts forward over his comrade's shoulder. The Viking falls, a spear in his throat. Now the true power of the phalanx is unleashed. The Othismos. The rear ranks of Spartans begin to push. This isn't a wild mob. It's a coordinated, rhythmic, grinding pressure. The entire 500-man block begins to move forward like a glacier. The Viking Shield Wall, already battered, starts to buckle under the immense, crushing weight. They aren't being fought. They're being run over. They are trying to fight as individuals against a machine. Fourth and final stage is the collapse. Under the relentless pressure and constant casualties, the Viking Shield Wall shatters. Gaps appear, and the Spartans pour in, dropping their broken spears and drawing their Scyphos short swords. The fight is no longer a battle line. It's a slaughter. Once that shield wall is broken, it's over. The Vikings are now just a panicked mob of individuals fighting for their lives against an enemy that still has perfect formation. Their ferocity is useless against the disciplined ranks that surround and cut them down. A rout begins. But there is no wild, chaotic chase. The Spartans, ever disciplined, maintain their formation, rolling forward to ensure the victory is absolute and to prevent any chance of a rally or a trap. In this scenario, on an open field, the Vikings suffer a catastrophic defeat. Their casualties would be incredibly high, while the Spartans, protected by heavy armor and a superior system, would suffer minimal losses. Conclusion. So the final verdict. In a pitched battle on open ground, the Spartan Phalanx would crush the Viking Shield Wall. The Spartan combination of heavy armor, the longer reach of the dory, and the systematic power of the phalanx formation is a perfect counter to the Viking style of fighting. The Spartans were specialists in exactly this kind of warfare, and in their time, they were the masters. The Vikings' raw ferocity would be neutralized before they could even use it. However, and this is a big however, the winner of this fight depends entirely on where it's fought. If you put these guys in a forest, on the rocky hills of Greece, where phalanxes often had to fight, or if a Viking raiding party ambushed a Spartan column on the march, the tables would turn completely. In broken terrain, the phalanx can't keep its cohesion. The Spartans' heavy armor becomes a liability, and the Vikings' mobility, flexibility, and skill in chaotic, individual combat would give them a huge advantage. They would harass the Spartans from all sides, break them up, and cut them down. But in this specific test, formation against formation on a level playing field, the crown has to go to Sparta. Their entire society was built to perfect the art of the pitched battle, and in that arena, they were just about unbeatable.